Can you imagine a time when gold was as common as pebbles? An annual income of over 25 tons of gold? That would be hundreds of millions of dollars today, every single year. Sounds like a modern fairy tale, right? But that's exactly what the Bible tells us about King Solomon and his wealth, a treasure that has amazed us for millennia. But what's the truth? Pure legend? Welcome to Enriching Lives Bible Stories Revealed. Brought to you by Feed the Poor Foundation of America. Today, we're diving into the ancient scriptures to take a closer look at the almost mythical wealth of King Solomon. Solomon, Israel's third king and son of David, wasn't just known for his wisdom, but also for a fortune so incredible it became legendary. The Bible paints a pretty vivid picture: palaces dripping with gold, exotic goods, and a constant flow of money into his treasury. So, what exactly does the Bible say about the extent of Solomon's treasures? How did he even acquire such a massive fortune? From breathtaking annual gold shipments to clever trade routes that brought luxury goods from all over the world, we'll examine what the books of Kings and Chronicles have to say. This is a story of divine blessing, shrewd politics, and a golden age that resonates to this day. Join us on a little journey back in time to uncover what's behind King Solomon's fabulous wealth, just as it's written in the ancient texts. When we look into the Bible, specifically in the first book of Kings chapter 10, and the second book of Chronicles chapter 9, a picture of wealth is painted that's hard to imagine. Picture this. Solomon is said to have received 666 talents of gold annually. That's over 25 tons of pure gold every year. And that wasn't even all. There was also income from merchants, profits from trade, and tributes from other kings. To put that into perspective, that would be hundreds of millions, perhaps even billions of dollars today. Every single year. And what did his court look like? A dream of gold. He had 200 large shields made of hammered gold, each weighing around 7 kilos, plus 300 smaller shields, each with about 2 kilos of gold. These weren't just decorations. They were real status symbols of his power and wealth, displayed in the so-called House of the Forest of Lebanon. And then his throne. The Bible describes it as a masterpiece of ivory, overlaid with the purest gold. 6 steps led up to it, and on each step stood lion figures to the right and left, a total of 12 lions. Lions also flanked the armrests. The Bible specifically adds, nothing like it had ever been made for any other kingdom. Even the most everyday items in Solomon's palace were pure luxury. All his drinking vessels, gold. The other items in the House of the Forest of Lebanon, also pure gold. Silver, it is written, was considered almost worthless in Solomon's time, as common as stones on the streets of Jerusalem. And cedarwood, actually an expensive import, was as plentiful as native sycamore fig wood. His building projects were, of course, just as impressive. Foremost among them was the temple in Jerusalem, a magnificent structure adorned all over with gold and the finest materials. But his own palace, which he reportedly spent 13 years building, also spoke volumes. These weren't just buildings, they were gigantic demonstrations of his wealth and piety. The Queen of Sheba, intrigued by stories of Solomon's wisdom and riches, traveled from a distant land to test him. When she experienced Solomon's wisdom firsthand, saw the palace, the food on his table, the organization of his people, and the splendor of his offerings in the temple, she was, according to the Bible, overwhelmed. She said that what she saw surpassed anything she had ever imagined. She hadn't even been told half of it. And she herself? Naturally, she also brought him gifts, gold, spices, and precious stones in abundance. These incredible amounts of gold, silver, ivory, plus exotic animals like apes and peacocks, which his ships brought every 3 years. It all sounds almost more like myth than reality, doesn't it? But the Bible writers narrate all this quite soberly, as if they were factual reports of truly unprecedented prosperity. Such a massive fortune doesn't just fall from the sky. The Bible mentions several reasons and strategies that contributed to King Solomon's legendary wealth. It was likely a mix of clever administration, good relationships, and booming international trade. A large chunk of Solomon's income came from tributes. The Bible states that the kings and rulers of neighboring regions and Arabian territories regularly brought Solomon gold and other valuables. This wasn't unusual at the time. More powerful empires received dues from smaller states or subjugated peoples. Solomon's kingdom, as we read in the first book of Kings, stretched from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines and to the border of Egypt. The rulers there paid taxes and were subject to him. Additionally, there were taxes within his own land. The kingdom was divided into 12 districts, each with its own governor. These men were responsible for supplying the royal court and the army with all necessities for 1 month of the year. While this primarily served supply purposes, such an efficient system for collecting resources also indicates good administration. And this indirectly contributed to prosperity by ensuring the stability and functioning of the large court and military. Income from merchants and traders passing through his land or doing business there was another source of revenue. This was perhaps the biggest engine for Solomon's economy. The Bible describes him as a truly shrewd international trader and shipowner. He had a close partnership with Hiram, the king of Tyre, who was a Phoenician naval power. Together, they had a merchant fleet. One of the most famous trading missions was the voyage to Ophir. Every 3 years, Solomon's ships, often called ships of Tarshish, which could indicate either the destination or a type of ship, returned, packed with gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Where exactly Ophir was located is still debated by scholars today. Arabia, Africa, India. Regardless, it was obviously a source of immense wealth, especially gold. Solomon also controlled important overland trade routes. He traded in horses and chariots. The texts state that he imported horses from Egypt and Kui, probably Cilicia in modern-day Turkey, and then resold them at a hefty profit to the Hittite and Aramean kings. The fact that he had store cities and cities for his chariots and horsemen built shows how large and organized this operation was. With 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, he not only had a formidable army but also valuable trade goods. His trade relations also included the import of luxury goods and building materials. Cedar wood from Lebanon, supplied by King Hiram, was crucial for the construction of the temple and the palace. In return, Solomon supplied Hiram with wheat and olive oil. This was a rather sophisticated system of import and export that made Jerusalem ever richer. Some researchers and archaeologists are even looking for evidence of trade links as far as Spain, which would suggest an extensive maritime trade network with the Phoenicians. The Bible repeatedly emphasizes Solomon's extraordinary wisdom, a gift from God after he, in a dream, asked not for riches or a long life, but for a listening heart to govern his people justly. This wisdom wasn't just for show, it had very practical effects on his reign and economic success. His ability to make wise decisions and lead his kingdom well certainly contributed to stability and prosperity. His wisdom also attracted foreign dignitaries like the aforementioned Queen of Sheba. Such visits were more than just polite gestures. They often brought substantial gifts, gold, silver, spices, and other valuables that further filled Solomon's treasuries. People from all over the world came to hear his wisdom, and everyone brought a gift. Furthermore, Solomon used strategic alliances, often cemented by marriage politics. His marriage to the daughter of the Egyptian pharaoh, for example, was a major political event that likely brought trade advantages and security. Although the Bible later criticizes his many foreign wives for turning his heart away from God, such marriages were a common means at the time to maintain good relations and secure trade routes. In short, according to the Bible, Solomon's wealth had many pillars: direct tributes, well-organized domestic taxes, an extensive and profitable international trade network by land and sea, and, of course, the fruits of his legendary wisdom and clever political moves. Accumulating wealth is one thing, but managing and presenting it well is quite another. The Bible also gives us some clues here as to how this enormous fortune was managed and used, further underscoring the image of Solomon's legendary splendor. Dividing his kingdom into 12 districts with responsible governors was not only clever for supplying the court. The whole setup suggests a fairly centralized administration capable of pooling and distributing resources from across the land. Such a system naturally requires a capable bureaucracy to keep track of income and expenditure. The massive construction projects, especially the temple and his palace, were, of course, the most conspicuous signs of his wealth and power. 7 years for the temple, 13 for his palace, that's quite something. These projects required not only vast amounts of gold, silver, bronze, cedarwood, and other precious materials, but also a huge workforce. The Bible speaks of tens of thousands of men, Israelites and foreigners, who were recruited for this. Financing and organizing such mammoth projects says a lot about his resources and organizational talent. His large court, his many wives and concubines, plus all the staff and the military, all of this had to be constantly supplied and, well, cost money. The daily provisions for the royal table, as described in the first book of Kings, chapter 4, were gigantic, huge quantities of flour, livestock, game, and poultry. This suggests, sophisticated logistics and either substantial agricultural surpluses or many imports. The golden shields in the house of the forest of Lebanon and the golden drinking vessels, which we've already heard about, were not just pure luxury. They were part of the royal treasury and certainly also served to make a strong impression at ceremonies and on foreign guests. And the fact that silver was considered so common further emphasizes how much of the even more valuable metals he must have possessed. The Bible tells it in such a way that this wealth was not simply hoarded, it was actively used to consolidate his power, fulfill religious duties like building the temple, and display an image of incredible royal magnificence. It was a system based on income and wise expenditure to manage the kingdom and cement its status in the world at that time. So we've now taken a look at what the Bible tells us about King Solomon's legendary wealth. And what emerges is a pretty impressive picture of a king whose fortune was likely unparalleled in antiquity. Let's briefly summarize where all the money came from, according to the Bible. There was the annual gold tribute of an incredible 666 talents. Added to this were taxes and duties from merchants and dependent kings. His vast international trade network was also very important. With his fleet, which he operated together with King Hiram of Tyre, gold, silver, ivory, and exotic goods, came from distant lands like Ophir every 3 years. His trade in horses and chariots was also super profitable. And let's not forget the gifts from important people like the Queen of Sheba, who were attracted by his wisdom and further filled his treasuries. This incredible wealth, gold and silver, became everyday items. Magnificent buildings like the temple and his palace were erected, has kept the legend of Solomon alive for millennia. The Bible writers often see this prosperity as the fulfillment of divine promises. Solomon had initially asked for wisdom, not riches, and God then gave him both in abundance. But the story also has a little warning. In the 5th book of Moses, the kings of Israel are warned against accumulating too much gold, horses, or wives. Solomon's later years were then also marked by considerable extravagance and a turning towards the gods of his foreign wives. This hints a bit at the dangers that such immense wealth and power can bring. In the end, this cast a shadow over this golden age and led to the division of the kingdom after his death. The stories of King Solomon's wealth are therefore more than just reports about gold and trade. They are deeply embedded in our cultural and religious heritage and give us insights into contemporary notions of kingship, the complexity of power, and the eternal human fascination with wisdom and prosperity. Whether one sees the whole thing as historical fact, as handed-down legend, or as a divine story, King Solomon's fabulous wealth captivates and inspires us to this day. What do you think about the biblical accounts of King Solomon's wealth? Are there perhaps other Bible stories whose secrets we should delve into for you? Just write it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this little journey back in time to the ancient texts, then give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more episodes of Bible Stories Revealed. And very importantly, activate the bell so you don't miss any of our next voyages of discovery.